Long before the first heartbeats echoed, a cruel prophecy silently sealed the fate of two souls. Inside the body of the pregnant mother Rebecca, a fierce battle erupted between two tiny beings. The violent struggle terrified her so much that she sought guidance from the Almighty Creator. A voice echoed from the heavens, carrying a fateful verdict that would tear this family apart forever. The whisper affirmed that two nations were forming in her womb, and the older would bow down to serve the younger. The day of birth arrived, and the first child emerged with a profoundly different appearance. The boy was covered in red hair like a wild cloak and was given the name Esau. But in the very next moment, a tiny hand reached out from the darkness, gripping his brother's heel tightly. The second child refused to be outdone, appearing with a fierce struggle, and was called Jacob. That name carried a deep meaning, hinting at a heel grabber or, more accurately, a usurper of another's place. As time passed, the two brothers grew up to become absolute polar opposites within the family. Esau was muscular, wild, and passionate about hunting across the rugged mountains and forests. Jacob was a quiet, calculating young man who preferred to stay around the peaceful tents. The aging father, Isaac, gave all his love to the firstborn because he relished the taste of excellent wild game. Meanwhile, the mother, Rebecca, secretly embraced and devoted her heart to the youngest son, remembering the prophecy. This blatant favoritism was the very first seed of hatred sown into their household. One fateful afternoon, impulsiveness demanded a heavy price beyond imagination. Esau returned from a hunting trip with an exhausted body and a hunger tearing at his soul. His eyes were glued to the red lentil stew boiling on Jacob's fireplace. Nearly out of his mind with hunger, Esau rudely ordered his brother to give him that fragrant food immediately. Jacob looked up, his eyes flashing with cold calculation, and made an insane proposition. He demanded that his brother sell him his birthright this very day in exchange for a bowl of soup. The birthright was not just a massive inheritance but the throne of family leadership and God's blessing. However, the immediate starvation blinded the thoughtless wild hunter. Esau bitterly complained that if he was about to die of hunger, what good was that birthright? Without a single moment of hesitation, he swore an oath and sold out a magnificent future just for a full stomach. History recorded an ultimate act of foolishness when Esau despised the very blessing of his own bloodline. Years drifted by, and the father, Isaac, was now old and his eyes were covered by the shadows of age. Knowing he did not have long to live, he called his favorite son Esau to bestow his final blessing. He instructed his son to take his bow into the forest, hunt the best game, and make his favorite stew to receive the blessing. But the veil of darkness hid a pair of ears listening to every word from outside the tent. Rebecca heard everything and decided to personally intervene in the arrangement of destiny. She called Jacob, ordering him to bring 2 young goats so she could cook a fake wild game dish that his father loved. Jacob trembled, not out of guilt for the lie, but out of fear that his father would discover his smooth skin and curse him. The mother decisively replied that she would bear any curses, as long as he did exactly as instructed. She draped Jacob in his house clothes, reeking of the outdoors, to deceive the blind father's sense of smell. More professionally, she wrapped goat skins around Jacob's hands and neck to create a rough, hairy texture just like his brother. With his heart pounding in his chest, the deceiver entered his father's quiet tent. Jacob claimed to be Esau, offering the aromatic food and asking the father to sit up and bless him. Isaac was suspicious, wondering how his son could have hunted wild game so quickly. Without hesitation, Jacob dragged the name of God into the charade, claiming God had helped him find the prey fast. Still not entirely convinced, the frail father asked his son to step closer so he could touch him himself. The wrinkled hand stroked along the goatskin-covered arms, and Isaac whispered in utter confusion. The voice was definitely Jacob's, but these hands were truly the wild hands of Esau. His senses deceived by the perfect act, Isaac asked his son to kiss him one last time. The scent of the fields from the old clothes shattered the final doubts of the elderly father. He placed his hands on Jacob's head, pouring out the most sacred blessings of rule, wealth, and absolute power. The blessing was spoken, and no force on earth could ever take it back. Just as the usurper's heel disappeared behind the door, the eldest brother Esau gleefully returned with the wild game. He walked in, respectfully offering his father the delicious food with a deep yearning to receive his rightful blessing. Isaac trembled violently in sheer shock when he realized he had just been blatantly deceived by his youngest son. The cruel truth struck like a fatal knife. Esau collapsed and let out an agonizing, heart-wrenching scream to the heavens. He begged his father to give him another blessing, but all the very best things had already been stolen. From that second on, a massive seed of hatred took deep root in the hunter's soul. Esau gritted his teeth and silently swore a deadly oath that the moment their father died, he would end Jacob's life himself. Receiving a secret warning about the assassination plan, the frantic mother pushed her beloved son into an escape with no return date. Jacob hastily fled his homeland, carrying the stolen blessing but stepping empty-handed into a lonely wasteland. He had no idea that this journey of exile would drag on for 2 grueling decades filled with tears. Darkness enveloped the fleeing young man, gnawing away at the last bit of courage left in his mind. In the middle of the freezing, desolate wasteland, Jacob picked up a rough stone for a pillow and fell into an exhausted sleep. Right in that pitch-black night, a surreal dream tore open the sky and opened a door of communication with the divine realm. He saw a giant ladder connecting the earth to heaven, where angels were continuously ascending and descending. From the profound heights, the voice of the Almighty echoed, promising him this land and absolute protection on his path of exile. The deceiver woke up in utter astonishment, realizing that even in the darkest place, a divine presence was always watching over him. He set the stone up as a pillar, poured oil to consecrate it, and made a vow of loyalty if he could return in peace. The journey continued to lead Jacob to the land of Haran, where he came across a well blocked by a massive stone. Just at that moment, destiny arranged for him to see Rachel, the beautiful daughter of his uncle Laban, leading her flock of sheep. The power of love at first sight caused Jacob to single-handedly push away the heavy stone that normally required the strength of multiple men. He embraced Rachel, sobbing like a child because he had finally found a safe haven after days of extreme loneliness and fear. Jacob was taken in by Laban's family, but Laban was also a cunning merchant, equally manipulative and scheming. Noticing his nephew's insane love for Rachel, Laban set a trap, demanding that he work for free for 7 long years in exchange for the right to marry her. For a man drowning in love like Jacob, those 2,555 days of hard labor passed as quickly as the blink of an eye. Finally, the wedding day arrived, a lavish feast was held, and the heavily veiled bride was brought into the tent in the dark of night. Jacob yearned to enjoy the sweetest moment of his life, making love to his new wife without a single shred of suspicion. However, when the first light of dawn shone into the tent, a cruel truth slapped the usurper right in the face. The person lying next to him was not the stunning Rachel, but Leah, the older sister with sad eyes and a plain appearance. The man who had deceived his blind father in the dark was now deceived by his own uncle on a dim wedding night. The law of karma operated flawlessly, forcing Jacob to fully taste the agonizing pain and outrage of someone who has been robbed. Laban coldly used the excuse of a local custom that forbade marrying off the younger sister before the older one, and forced Jacob to work another 7 years to win Rachel. With no other choice, Jacob gritted his teeth and accepted the 14-year slave contract just because of his fierce love for one woman. This shared marriage turned Jacob's family into a battlefield of jealousy, envy, and relentless competition for favor. Understanding the humiliation of the unloved wife, the Creator blessed Leah with the ability to bear children continuously, while Rachel remained barren. It took immense suffering and intense internal struggles before Rachel finally gave birth to a son, Joseph, the shining hope of the bloodline. After 20 years of draining his youth and dedication, Jacob decided it was time to escape Laban's grip and build his own empire. Using sharp intellect and an understanding of natural laws, Jacob plotted to breed spotted and speckled sheep, turning them into his legal assets. Jacob's massive wealth skyrocketed, drawing hostile glares and burning jealousy from Laban's sons. Receiving guidance from above, Jacob secretly gathered his entire family, herds, and riches to execute a spectacular escape. Discovered and relentlessly pursued for 7 days, Jacob finally had to face the wrath of his greedy uncle. But thanks to the miraculous intervention of the Almighty in Laban's dream, a peace treaty was signed, setting Jacob free forever. The biggest obstacle now was not Laban, but the ghost of his past named Esau, the brother who bore a heavy blood oath of vengeance. Intelligence reported that Esau was approaching with 400 fierce armed men, throwing Jacob into absolute panic. Extreme fear forced him to divide his family and assets, while simultaneously sending enormous gifts to appease his brother's anger. That night, at the ford of the Jabbok River, Jacob sent all his loved ones to the other side, locking himself in the darkness of isolation and fear. Suddenly, a mysterious entity emerged from the invisible realm, attacking and wrestling with him in a desperately uneven battle. The life-or-death clash lasted through the night. Jacob fought with the fiercest survival instinct, absolutely refusing to surrender. Even when the opponent delivered a devastating blow that agonizingly dislocated his hip, Jacob clung tightly to the being, screaming for a blessing. The mysterious man asked for his name, and the moment Jacob declared it was also the moment he fully acknowledged his deceitful ego. Instantly, a new title was bestowed. The name Israel rang out, symbolizing the one who had struggled with both God and man and emerged victorious. The brilliant dawn broke. Jacob walked away with a permanent limp, but his soul was held high with the pride of a reborn man. That physical wound was not a punishment, but a medal of honor proving his resilience and courage to confront destiny. This cruel story leaves behind a lifetime lesson that the path to greatness always exacts a toll in sweat, tears, and indelible scars. Running away never solves adversity. Only when we dare to stand our ground and wrestle with our own darkness can we truly find the light of a transformed life.